And good evening. Hi. Welcome to our midweek Wednesday night Bible study. Pastor Sean, Ascension Lutheran Church, East Lansing, Michigan. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing our long series on the book of Isaiah. Tonight we are up to chapters 34 and 35. I think that officially puts us at the halfway or past the halfway mark, so we're moving right along here. As we always talk about, or as I always talk about, please make liberal use of the chat box to ask any questions, any comments, any clarifications you might need, whatever. I am happy to stop and revisit anything or explore whatever question you might have. So the more interaction we have, the better the study. So. All right, see, my mom's online already, so there we go. Once my mom says hi on the stream, then it's time to go. All right, so tonight we've got chapters 34 and 35, and they're brief chapters. So this, in all likelihood, whenever I say it's going to be a short one, those are the ones that always go long. So there's that. But I think it will be a short session tonight because. I didn't want to get into chapter 36 because that begins kind of a new section of Isaiah. So chapters 30 and 4 kind of function as a conclusion to the first part of Isaiah's prophecy. And what we have in these two chapters is Isaiah turning our attention to the end of time, the last day. So we have two very different contrasts that we're going to be looking at. And chapter 34 is about the day of God's vengeance. So it is very heavy on God's judgment and all that. Chapter 35, however, is about the day of God's glory, which is salvation for his people, redemption, all that stuff. And they're both the same day. It's just going to be two very different perspectives on the same thing. But it kind of wraps everything up in the first part of Isaiah here. So so let's get right into it. And Steve is here too. Hi, Steve. All right, chapter 34, verses 1 through 4. Draw near, O nations, to hear, and give attention, O peoples. Let the earth hear and all that fills it, the world and all that comes from it. For the Lord is enraged against all the nations, and furious against all their host. He has devoted them to destruction, has given them over for slaughter. Their slain shall be cast out, and the stench of their corpses shall rise. The mountains shall flow with their blood. There we go. All the host of heaven shall rot away, and the skies roll up like a scroll. All their host shall fall as leaves fall from the vine, like leaves falling from the fig tree. So, yeah, not good stuff. Devoted to destruction, given over for slaughter. The slain cast out, stench of their corpses shall rise, the mountains shall flow with their blood. Very gruesome kind of stuff. So the problem, what brings about all of this horror is in verse 2. For the Lord is enraged against all the nations. So yeah, the Lord is upset. He is angry. The nations have made him angry. They have upset him. So yeah, this is the wrath of God. I mean, this is what is the fruit of bringing that wrath down upon you. Now, up until this point in Isaiah, pretty much most of the judgments that have been pronounced have been fairly specifically pointed to certain groups of people, certain nations and whatnot, and various locations, peoples, whatever. They've been very kind of targeted. But here in chapter 34, it is the whole world, all nations. Let the earth hear and all that fills it. So this is a word that is going out to everybody. Okay, so this is the big time here, and of course the reason is because God is God of the universe. I mean, He is Lord over all things. So on this day of the vengeance of God, on this last day, His wrath is poured out on everybody, all who have rejected Him, all who have sinned. Excuse me. He is going to bring an end to it all. Now, don't jump too far ahead, because if He's pouring His wrath out upon all who sinned, how can anybody stand? But you got to remember that He pours out His wrath on everybody. On the last day, everything is wiped clean. But for those who believe, for those who have faith, when that wrath is poured out, we are covered by the blood of the Lamb. So we have we are kind of, we are protected from that. So don't freak out too much just yet. So it's not a pretty picture, especially this, the slain cast out, the stench of their corpses shall rise, the mountains shall flow with their blood. I mean, it's very gruesome kind of imagery. It's brutal. And you kind of tend to wonder, if this is talking about the day of judgment, the day of God's wrath, why doesn't He simply just kind of poof, and they're gone? Why is there this this suffering, this giving them over for slaughter? Why is it like that? There's a couple reasons for this. One that is, I think, very, very kind of direct. The other one is one that I think it might be more my take on it, but I'll start with that one. So my take whenever I read something like this, and how I understand that, is that that God, when He pours out His wrath upon us, that the judgment that is meted out is, because God is a just God, and so he lets the judgment fit the crime. Okay, and really what we see here is the heinous nature of our sin. I'm not saying individual, but we as a people, we as human beings, I mean, what is our lasting impact on the world? I mean, it's just bloodshed and slaughter and death and indifference, at the very best, indifference to those less fortunate, those around us, and at worst, just outright death and destruction. So when I encounter a text like this and talking about judgment, and it's just gruesome and grim and brutal, the way I see it is it's kind of we reap what we sow kind of situation, that the punishment fits the crime. And this kind of leads into what I think is the more kind of direct or common understanding of these things, is that we we typically view God's judgment, His wrath, as an abstract. I think it's the only way we really can. So if you imagine the reality of hell, you can't. You can't wrap your head around it. I mean, we have maybe a brief glimpse of an idea of what that could be, but the only way we can conceive of that is as an abstraction. And same thing for eternal life, because we, even when I talk to Christians who, they're looking forward to the resurrection, eternal life in paradise, in the presence of God, in the presence of Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and just life eternal and joy and happiness and peace and comfort and all these wonderful things. And so very often I'll hear little complaints, and some of them jokingly, but others not so much, like wondering what it's going to be like. So are we going to do the same thing, like for a job, over and over again? I mean, for eternity? Or usually I get are we just going to be on clouds playing harps? First of all, that gets a completely wrong idea about the new creation. But anyway, the idea is that like, oh well, I don't want to be doing the same thing forever, and what if I get bored, or am I still going to be married because I want to be with my spouse? And so we can't. Anytime those kind of things come up about the resurrection and eternal life, it's kind of like we're judging it based on our current situation. And like we have these scriptures that confirm that it will be bliss and eternal and joy and all this wonderful stuff, and it will be perfect. Everyone will be perfectly content and happy. And yet we're still unable to really conceive of that, and so we can only look at it from our current situation. And so, well, is there going to be country music? Because I don't like country music. That would be me. Other people would be like, is there heavy metal? Because I don't want heavy metal. Now, for me, if there's no heavy metal in heaven, I'll be very upset. But see, it's like it's all an abstraction. So I think in a way how this kind of a text functions is to describe something like the wrath of God in a very visceral, real way. So it's not just like, oh, God's wrath is coming, and you're like, okay, it must be, it must suck. No, it's this. It is being given over for slaughter, the slain cast out, the stench of their corpses rising to the mountains, rising the mountains shall flow with their blood. It is this visceral, physical, gut-wrenching picture to really make us understand the severity and the reality of it, which actually kind of connects to what I was preaching on last Sunday with the bread of life, and how Jesus says you must chew on my flesh, like gnaw on it. And he's using this language to kind of kick it up a notch to indicate to the people that this is real. This is not metaphor. It is not allegory. It is not symbolic. It is real. So I think that's what goes on in these things. Not that God delights in this kind of thing. In fact, he doesn't. But it's just, this is how it's being described to us. This is to get us to understand. And if this is, true to form, then this is what we deserve. Which should terrify all of us. because we downplay our sin. We think, well, my sin isn't that big of a deal. That's what it deserves. Big deal. Oh, my mom says bagpipes. Lots of bagpipes. No comment. That'll be in one corner, I guess. All right, so yes, grim, brutal, terrible picture. So yeah, very, very dire situation there at the end. Verses 5 through 7. For my sword has drunk its fill in the heavens. Behold, it descends for judgment upon Edom, upon the people I have devoted to destruction. The Lord has a sword. Lord has a sword. It is sated with blood. It is gorged with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah, a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Wild oxen shall fall with them, and young steers with the mighty bulls. Their land shall drink its fill of blood, and their soil shall be gorged with fat. So yeah, even more. God's sword sated with blood, gorged with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats. I mean, just more of this. Oh my gosh, this is the reckoning day. This is our reckoning day, and it's just terrifying. Now, Edom. For a very general, all the world, all the nations. Now we get very specific with going to Edom. So what's going on there? Well, Edom gets singled out here, most likely just as a stand-in for all of the enemies of God. And I think this functions for a reason, because it starts off with, hear me, O nations, and the judgment that is pronounced is the word is going out to all nations. Like, this is what's going to happen. But then there's kind of a swerve here, and he directs it to Edom, okay? And I think this is to differentiate that, yes, judgment is coming upon all the world. However, my chosen, the ones who I will save, are separated from this. Okay, Edom as a fill-in for the enemies of God, for the unbelievers, the unfaithful, Edom is going to be the representative here. Similarly to how in the book of Revelation, Babylon stands for the enemies of God. So I think that's what's happening here. Well, actually, I mean, that is what's happening here. It's not really a matter of what I think. It is. So Edom, why them? Well, they were a continual enemy of God's people. They lived in an area that was south of Judah. Excuse me. And they had a very, very conflicted history with Israel, the people of Israel. David had conquered them and kind of had them subservient to Israel, but they were always hostile. They would often rise up and try to lash out. King Amaziah defeated 10,000 of them at one point. Jewish forces captured another 10,000 and killed them by throwing them off a cliff. So not a lot of love going on there between the two. So they are historical enemies of God and his people. They're spiritual enemies as well because they are unbelievers. They are apart from the people of God. So really it is just Edom is being used as a stand-in because Edom versus Judah is this conflict that was always brutal, always bloody, always going on. So it really does the hostility and the conflict between them really fits the judgment that Isaiah is prophesying here. So all that background and baggage kind of carries through with the whole judgment motif. So, and then verses 8 through 15. There we go. For the Lord has a day of vengeance. Here we go. A year of recompense, for the cause of Zion. And the streams of Edom shall be turned into pitch, and her soil into sulfur. Her land shall become burning pitch. Night and day it shall not be quenched. Its smoke shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. None shall pass through it forever and ever. But the hawk and the porcupine shall possess it. The owl and the raven shall dwell in it. He shall stretch the line of confusion over it, and the plumb line of emptiness. Its nobles, there is no one there to call it a kingdom, and all its princes shall be nothing. Thorns shall grow over its strongholds, nettles and thistles in its fortresses. It shall be the haunt of jackals, an abode for ostriches. And wild animals shall meet with hyenas. The wild goat shall cry to his fellow. Indeed, there the night bird settles and finds for herself a resting place. There the owl nests and lays and hatches and gathers her young in her shadow. Indeed, there the hawks are gathered, each one with her mate. Okay, so, so the day of vengeance, okay, and this is for the cause of Zion. Okay, so what the reason for God's judgment, the reason for this day of vengeance, why this is coming, is not only because God is angry, but for the cause of Zion, to protect and defend his people. So basically, the reason for this is to finally bring an end to the plight of his people. The ones that he has set apart, that he has promised to deliver, promised to protect, promised to bring salvation to. This is the fulfillment. This is the culmination of all of that, because he will strike down all of their enemies. There will be no more enemies after this. And basically the rest of what is described here in verses 8 through 15 is just how desolate he will make the nations. The enemies of God. I mean, they're all emptied out. You have this imagery of burning and fire, judgments, damnation, hellfire, all that stuff. And then these wild animals that take over. So the people are just gone, and so these wild animals begin possessing the land. The porcupine, the hawk, jackals, hyenas. Not the most desired animals. These are not like domesticated, the cattle, the sheep, those kind of the animals that we get in the imagery of like the calm peace of salvation. No, these are kind of stragglers, and so this is what God is making of His enemies. Absolute desolation. There's no joy. There's no gladness here. It's bad. I mean, that's kind of the point. Judgment is not good. Why would you want this? And then finally, 16 through 17, seek and read from the book of the Lord. Not one of these shall be missing, none shall be without her mate. For the mouth of the Lord has commanded, and his spirit has gathered them. He has cast the lot for them, his hand has portioned it out to them with the line. They shall possess it forever. From generation to generation they shall dwell in it. So I think, okay, here we go. So leading in here from before this, and indeed there are hawks. There the hawks are gathered, each one with her mate, and then we get into this. So basically, it's re-emphasizing that God is doing this, God is bringing this, and He will give the land of the unbelievers over to the animals forever. That they are more worthy to live there than now. This is not saying that on the day of judgment there's going to be like a desolate land with wild animals or anything, but he's just saying this is what becomes of those who don't believe. And the part here about seek and read from the book of the Lord is basically seek the scriptures, look in the scriptures, see for yourself. The message is no different from the rest of the Word of God. That this judgment, this day of vengeance, has been foretold long ago by so many people. There has been warning after warning after warning that this day is coming, and it will be here. So, serious, pretty heavy stuff. But that's the end of chapter 34. So, any questions or comments about that cheery little bit of sunshine? Next chapter is much better, by the way. But yeah, it's a lot of doom and gloom right there. Definitely not something you want to lead into if you're trying to evangelize. It might be a little bit heavy. But I mean, the point of all this is that it's true. I mean, this is the judgment for our sin. This is what our sin merits, what we merit. So even on your best day, where you think I've been a good person, you are still a sinner. Okay, you still have sin in your heart, and it is because of that. That is what you deserve. What all of us deserve. This is the wages of sin. This is what God must do to sin. We have brought sin into the equation. He must deal with it. It does not make him happy to have to deal with this, but he has to deal with it because he's a holy God, and he is a just God, and he cannot let this stand. He will deal with it. June. Hi, June. So good to see. Well, so good to see you. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. June's comment is this: can you speak to the end of the Afghanistan war and this passage? Whew. Yeah. I mean, as with most prophecies and discussions about the last day, the day of judgment, while they definitely pertain to that last day, and so they're calling ahead, what's going to happen, there's always going to be situations and events in our day that are going to foreshadow that are going to be like little versions of that, or just we see, what are, well, I guess the foreshadowing. So certainly, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, the fear that we have in what we're seeing now is desolation, the people being, just just crushed under the heel of whatever. And so, I mean, we kind of we always see these little fragments of judgment, essentially, or just not just judgment, but I want to say here. Um, Brain is, but yeah, definitely we see, what we see going on in Afghanistan is certainly just kind of an ongoing reminder that the end is coming. Jesus tells us plainly to expect these kinds of things. Now that's always interesting, because even though Jesus says we should expect these things, and even though he tells us these things must come to pass before the end, giving it an air of inevitability, does not mean that we should just sit back and be very passive in the face of suffering. Or anything like that. In fact, even in the face of terrible things that we are powerless against. If there's a situation where we could truly, there was nothing we could do to stop it from happening, it still doesn't mean that we, as Christians, are called to just say, well, it's out of my hands. Our call is to love and serve our neighbor, to support them, to stand up for them, and to protect them. It doesn't matter what the circumstances. It doesn't matter the inevitability of whatever is going on. So, we so would love to view the passing of time as getting better. That things are just going to be getting better and better, or if we work hard enough, things will improve. The picture we get in Scripture is the opposite. That as the time draws near, things will get worse, and worse, and worse. And yeah, I mean, that's basically what we see unfolding right now. That you leave a bit of an opening, and evil will sweep in. That the this is, I mean, what we see is yeah, sinful people who want to control things and have everything their way. Yeah. So, this is all kind of the stuff that we see that God is looking at, and this is what angers him. And not to say that's, what's going on over there angers him any more than the stuff that we do right here, right now, that angers him. I mean, all sin angers him. But yeah, yeah, it's just very sad days, very sad days. So I'm not sure. Hopefully, June, I addressed what you were saying there. Um, I mean, it's kind of, it's just really depressing, honestly. um, just to see all that stuff just falling apart, and just the suffering, and the people who are so desperate to um, get out and to flee from what they're afraid of. Rightfully so, I would say. um, and I mean, as Christians, what is our role in this? Oh, okay. I did answer. I did speak to it. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to speak a little bit more. In what we see happening right now, what is our role as Christians in this? Certainly to do what we can to offer assistance to these people. To those who are trying to flee, should we accept them as refugees? Should we do what we can to get them settled somewhere where they have safety and protection for their families? Yeah, sure, definitely. I'm very much this is what we're called to do, to provide for our neighbor, and I mean, and that's not just us here. I mean, these are Christians across the world. This is what they are called to do. What we are called to do is to care for people. So now, if you're asking me what the government should do, That's a whole nother discussion, and I don't have a lot of nice things to say about governments, any kind of government. So, I prefer to lean on what our duty is as a Christian. So, I will save the political rantings for later. All right. Well, on that upbeat note, we have 35, Isaiah 35. All right, lots brief or more of a brief kind of uptick here. So verses 1 through 2. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like the crocus. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. All right, so this is the same day. The same day of vengeance will be this day that Isaiah is describing here. And so this is the perspective of that day for those who believe. For those who have faith in Jesus Christ, this is what they will be experiencing. And what we see here is the recreating of the new creation, the God making all things as they should be. So the wilderness and dry land shall be glad. So the land of sadness will be happy. The desert will rejoice and blossom. So from the desert where nothing grows, things will burst forth. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. They list out, Lebanon, Carmel, Sharon, places that were known for their fertility and beauty. The glory of those things shall be given to the wilderness. So those who have walked this world, afflicted by it, but trusting in God, they will rejoice and sing. They will be brought into this rebirth of creation, and it will be a day of joy and gladness. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who have an anxious heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, with a recompense of God. I can't say that word. Recompense of God. He will come and save you. The gospel brings comfort and peace. Like I said, God takes no delight in the destruction of the wicked, but the day of recompense will come. He will come with vengeance. And this is the great thing is in this gospel passage, the comfort is telling the people, God will come with vengeance. But it's comforting because the vengeance is not for them. It is for their enemies. The vengeance is against their enemies. So God is coming to fight the battle, not just fight the battle. He's coming to win the battle, win the war. Be strong, fear not. Which is this is great stuff, because he's saying, like, stand strong, don't don't collapse under the pressure. Kind of this acknowledgement that yes, until that day comes, this is going to be hard. Life is not going to be easy. You will be afflicted. You will face difficulties and sufferings and all this stuff. But be strong. Fear not. Behold, your God will come. Okay, God is coming. Be strong in Him. Know that He is coming to defeat your enemies, to defeat all of our enemies, to defeat death itself. He will come and save you. This is a wonderful, wonderful reminder for all who believe. And just say to those who have an anxious heart. I think that's all of us. I think we all have anxious hearts. So this is a message for you and me. Good stuff. Awesome stuff. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute sing for joy. For waters break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. In the haunt of jackals where they lie down, the grass shall become reeds and rushes. So again, he's reversing the corruption of the world. When God comes, all that is broken will be fixed, will be made right again. So the eyes of the blind will be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. So the physical brokenness of our bodies is reversed. The brokenness of creation will be remade. It's just a wonderful great picture of what that day will be for us, what the new creation brings for us. And what we have here is also kind of a picture of what happens in Jesus's ministry. So this connects with his work and the promise of that last day. That so on the last day, this is what's all going to happen. Well, what happens when Jesus comes? He opens the eyes of the blind. He makes the deaf to hear. So we see Jesus throughout his ministry bringing in little bits and pieces of the last day. He's bringing the gospel, the gospel parts of that last day. He's bringing the recreation, the renewing, the redemption. He's bringing little bits and pieces of that and sprinkling them around. And like healing these who are lame and healing these people, and bringing this one to life again. And it's just so you get this beautiful picture of Jesus bringing, and again, it's this kind of redemption is real. When we talk about this last day stuff, I mean, all we can do is imagine. We have no connection with it, really. It's all an abstraction. And so when Jesus is walking this earth, he's bringing this abstraction and making it real, physical, tangible, doing it right there in front of, and so people can see it. He is feeding the multitudes, making enough from the land to provide. And so the wonderful thing that Jesus does when he interacts with us is he takes these things that are just concepts for us and makes it real, which is what I absolutely love about communion, because forgiveness. Forgiveness is a word, it's a feeling. When you say you forgive somebody, I mean, it's not tangible. I mean, it can be, and even for us, when somebody forgives us, especially if we do something against somebody that is just terrible and they forgive us, I mean, that gives us relief, and we're like, okay, that's great. I like this feeling. And yet we might question it. We might think, well, surely they couldn't forgive me for all of that. Or if we forgive others, and even in our forgiveness, we realize that our forgiveness is not complete and total. We still have the memory of things. We don't necessarily always get over completely the things that we forgive. I mean, we might move past it. We might it might not affect us anymore, but usually we hold on to a little bit of it. It's always kind of hanging on a little bit. So it's always this kind of nebulous sort of thing. In communion, Jesus brings his forgiveness, ties it to the promise of his body and blood, which also then comes to us in the bread and wine, and it gets placed into our hands. So Jesus takes this nebulous concept of forgiveness and says, okay, I'm going to take this forgiveness, put it right there. There we go, my body and blood, boom. Now you've got, in this bread and wine, my body and blood and my forgiveness. Now take it and put it inside of you. Eat it. Digest it. And that's the cool thing. He takes this abstraction and makes it real and tangible and physical for us. It is a chunk of forgiveness that we get to eat and drink, which is just wild. It's so cool. Yeah, that's why for any churches that deny the efficacy of communion, that they believe it's only a symbol, I feel so bad for them for not having that understanding and not being able to experience that just insane joy and comfort of actually knowing what you're receiving. So, little tangent there. Sorry. See, I'm just making sure that it does not end short, so we use up all of our time here. But we just have two more. Or oops, there we go. 3 more verses. And a highway shall be there, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it. It shall belong to those who walk on the way. Even if they are fools, they shall not go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come up on it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So here's the payoff here, the great gospel proclamation here. And the image of a highway for his chosen people, that God will make this road, this safe road. Because back then, roads were not roads like we have them now. They were well-trod paths, so that's what people are used to. And they could be treacherous, wild animals, bandits, whatever. Well, God is going to make a single highway rise up that will be safe, that will be free of predators, and it is for those who are holy, who've been made holy, those who believe, those that God has brought his redemption to. It leads directly to God, to his city. It is the pathway to him, and it recalls Isaiah 40, or recalls. Looks ahead to Isaiah 43, but also John the Baptist, with a voice calling out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. This is what we're talking about here. And of course, the ransom of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing, everlasting joy, gladness and joy, sorrow and sighing shall flee away, eternal bliss. The sorrows, the hurts, the pains, the afflictions of today, gone forever. That is what God brings. That is what he promises to you. That is the prize, if you want to call it that, of faith. It's it's not just to give you comfort in this moment. It is. That will be your everlasting life. That will be your eternity. That is what you will be raised into. So, yeah, good stuff. See, we go through the rough stuff and then we go get some of the good stuff here. And I mean, this is how it works. Let's see here. There we go. When we're talking about law and gospel, this is how God speaks to us. How he operates is. He speaks his law to us that convicts us, that shows us our sin, that shows us the seriousness of it and what it deserves. And we need to hear that. We need to be convicted of it, so that way when we hear the gospel, we desire it. Our sin wants nothing to do with the gospel, but so that law comes and just beats that old Adam down, and so that we say, Lord, have mercy. And he says, I will, and I do. My son Jesus Christ died for you. You are alive. And then the gospel just is that thing that brings us right back to life, and his life. Good stuff. June. Another comment from June. Your explanations are such a blessing. Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for commenting. Oh, it's so good to see you. Miss you a lot. So yeah. So that's chapter 34 and 35 tonight. So any questions about any of that? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's not... it's definitely rough in terms of content, like hard to hear, especially the chapter 34. But the beauty of it is that we have chapter 35, and that speaks to us, those who believe. And let's see, I think next week with 36, so that gets into that's Assyria and coming in, and we get into some different stuff. So we're moving a little bit away from the woes and the prophecies and all that good stuff. So, all right, I don't see any more comments, questions. Nobody. Okay then. All right. Well, Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time tonight to spend it with me in Bible study. Hope this helps your ongoing study of Isaiah, or if you are going to approach it later, that this gives you a much welcome, a very, very much welcome, very welcome background and maybe a little insight to kind of ease out your study a bit. But it is a pleasure to be able to do this with you. So thank you very much. And until next week, yeah, peace be with you. Take care.